It's the most popular refrain among every denomination of the religiously minded. God must exist. For how else can we explain the complexity of existence, the existence of morality, or the concept of beauty? To which the answer is, quite simply actually, beauty is a term we, that is, humans, use for things we find pleasurable to our senses. Morality is the behavioral code by which we maintain a functional society, and existence is a procedural condensation of simple particles and patterns into larger, more complex molecules and systems. There, you see, I just did in under 30 seconds what supernatural apologists have been trying and failing to do with all their old arbitrary scripts and hand-wavy voodoo for at least 4 or 5 generations now. Now why, you may wonder, do they still stubbornly insist that there must still be made room for a magical anthropomorphic immortal in our equations when there's clearly no actual pressing need of such a hypothesis, since there's no part of objective reality that can't be just as easily explained way better, by which I mean with fewer assumptions and begged questions, using just the observable facts of nature and our own logical deduction? Well, while it would be simpler to pawn it off as some fanatical construct of the adherent's own emotional recalcitrance, moral elitism, or intellectual impotency, this would be unfair, as it would lead us straight into the same trap the believers themselves often lay for themselves, that being the self-masturbatory rationale behind accusations like, well, you don't really disbelieve in God, you just hate him. It's the same inane passing of the buck we hear from all forms of ideological zealots, regardless of their creed, faith, origins, or politics. From the internet feminists, you're not actually red-pilled, you just hate women, to woke zombies, you don't actually just want to be free to live your best life, you hate gays and black people, to the more mid-witted conservatives and their corporate oligarch buddies, you don't actually want to amount to more than a menial debt slave, you're just lazy. The common through line of all of these accusations is that they all serve to flip the burden of having their own beliefs and positions put to the question back onto the questioner by insisting that yours is not, in fact, a rational critique, but a petty emotional one based on a sense of hedonistic entitlement brought about by some personal character flaw of yours, or else nefariously implanted in your head by some external cabal's brainwashing apparatus. Either way, it serves to absolve them of any need to defend their intellectual holdings by instead getting you to defend yourself and your opposition to them on moral rather than factual or logical grounds. Don't ever forget, the burden of proof is always on the person making the extraordinary claim, not on the skeptic asking to see their extraordinary evidence for it. So, having now said all of this, why do I still ask the question in the title? Am I just trolling for clicks and watch minutes? Well, technically yes, but even more technically, no. Let me explain. You see, in a previous video, I defined a spirit as anything we perceive as having independent agency, aka a will. This defines them against tools, which are non-autonomous objects that readily and easily comply with the user's will since they have none of their own with which to resist manipulation. If you look through, even casually, historical religious practices, you'll see that most, if not all, are bent around the objective of turning spirits into tools. That is, coercing, convincing, compelling, or in any other way getting them to act in ways beneficial to the practitioner and/or his congregation. To directly quote myself from back then, people worship the forces which rule them and venerate those which empower them. This is why the leftists worship the government and venerate bureaucracy, the theists worship their gods and venerate prayer, etc., and so on. The problem with all of this is that, when reviewed through an empirical, logical lens, we know now that sprinkling goat's blood on your door is not how you stop your kids from getting pneumonia. Likewise, the ringing of bells doesn't scare off thunderstorms. But the human brain doesn't have an inbuilt mechanism with which to cope with emergent phenomena. So, lacking a better alternative, our natural inclination is to ascribe to these enigmatic patterns humanoid thoughts and emotions which they don't actually possess. And to be totally fair to ourselves, the most complex systems our youngest hominid ancestors had to deal with on the regular were other animals. Other animals that do, in fact, share many of the same intrinsic drives and motivations of the average human. A hungry tiger, for example, will act similarly to a hungry Neanderthal, only the former is stronger, faster, better at hiding and stalking, and will smell your presence long before you see or hear them. This is why we tend to err on the side of caution when it comes to ghosts and demons. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they can't see you, and if you can't know their intentions are peaceful, best to assume they aren't, or you might become one of those mysterious disappearances the witch finders and ghost hunters love to trawl out whenever they're falling short on rent, which I guess must be the rule for that lot rather than the exception. But anyway, in another video I laid out, quite succinctly if I do say so myself, what I believe to be the links between the concepts of God, morality, and abstract thought. In it, I ponder on why it is that we, humans, are the only religious animal in the world, despite not being the only social animal in the world. To which my answer at the time was that we are the only animal on Earth who can perceive the world in abstract, iconographic terms. But I've since also concluded that it has to do with our advanced capacity for empathy, which means the capacity to view the world through the lens of another animal's experience. Both of these skills are necessary for fiction to be of any use to us whatsoever. After all, what is any character ever written if not a strategic combination of pattern data derived by their creator from their own experiential observations, perceived and understood, and subsequently animated by another separate mind? And what is a mind if not a conference of chemical reactions between neurons? What is a constellation but an arrangement of stars? What is a star but a mass of particles pressed together? And what is a particle but a confluence of energy waves? How can we say that we, beings comprised of atomic packets of energetic substance, are any more real than a being whose wavelengths are stored on a compact disk or on a piece of paper, because the latter only exists in our minds? Because until we look over the markings on the page, their essence remains inert and static? Do we not also exist only so long as our brain's matrices are operational? Do we not also cease to function when our brain cells die off? Is it not said that we die two deaths? Once when we breathe our last, and again when our names are spoken for the very last time. And is not a noun defined as a person, place, thing, or idea? Could not then an intelligent argument be made for the existence of an ephemeral realm, a realm composed not of physical matter, but of abstract notions, of dreams, a realm still inextricably bound to the material sphere, as a projection is still bound to the lights and motors of its projector, but whose internal constituents are unconstrained by, and just as often unconcerned with, the laws of logic or physics. For instance, a fantasy world where particles can be transformed, transmuted, translocated, or otherwise fundamentally altered by the non-local, non-causal intent of a magical practitioner would seem to our scientific, rational minds to be wholly absurd. And yet it is true for a vast majority of our fictional verses. Why? Well, if I were to hazard a guess, likely for the same reason that you never see or read about people in fiction doing mundane human activities such as using the toilet, go to bed or eat lunch, or even simply walk from point A to point B unless it is of vital importance to the plot. This is because these liminal spaces do not exist arbitrarily. Paradoxically, they still follow the rules of logic, even though they seem not to from our external vantage point. Take, for example, the character of Superman. Is he a real person? Not in the sense that you could literally get up, go to the Daily Planet in the city of Metropolis, and physically shake hands with Clark Kent. No. Most people understand this, but we still regard him as a contiguous being, with his own thoughts, his own morals, his own wants and dreams and struggles and experiences that are uniquely and inextricably his own. So why then do we say he's not real? Because men can't actually fly, bench press planets, or shoot laser beams from their eyes. In short, there's too many inconsistencies with our vision of what a man is for us to be fully deceived into accepting this as an actual human. In other words, Clark Kent does not function as a human does. We can't talk to him like we would a real human, but we can still empathize with him in an abstract way. To wind this whole convoluted mass of a script down, I'll leave you with a line from Albus Dumbledore. Of course it's all happening inside your head, Harry, but why should that mean it's not real? Until next time, stay safe, stay sane. If you like fiction or the schizophrenic exploration thereof, consider checking out my books on Amazon, and remember, no matter what anyone says, you can never think too much. You can only think badly. Peace be upon you.